Welcome in to another Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at doing this cartoonish laser light trail effect on text. I mean, you can really do it on any object. I kind of prefer this cartoony version, but there is a way we can do it without it looking cartoony. So with that said, let's open up a new Blender project. By default, mine doesn't have anything in it, so if you wanted to select all, delete the default light, default cube, and default camera, that would be great. Press 1 for front view, Shift A, and I'm going to select text, RX90 to rotate it 90 degrees. When I do text, I always go to the text editor here and I select center, and for this one we want to make sure the fill mode is set to none, and because there's a little bit of manipulation we're going to be doing here, I am going to go ahead and change this word to high. We're going to tab out of that. We're going to right click and convert to a mesh, hit tab to go into edit mode. Now, as you saw in my example, I did this once where I kind of mixed the letters together. I also did it where the letters were independent of each other, so feel free to do it either way. But if you want to do it where the letters are connected, in edit mode, we're going to select all these top vertices, hit delete, delete the edges, and then we're just going to start connecting things. So shift select each one of these and hit F for fill. I'm also going to hit the period on the number pad just to zoom in a little bit and help it out. So I'm going to go here, shift select here, and hit fill. I'm going to select this one, extrude X. I'm going to take it out just a little bit. EZ for extrude on the Z, EX for extrude on the X, EZ again to extrude on the Z, and then I'm going to shift select this guy and hit F to fill. We'll do the same thing on the bottom, select all these bottom vertices, delete the edges, and shift select, F for fill, shift select, F for fill, and then extrude, and extrude, shift select and fill. So now that we've got this, let me grab this one vertex and just level it up just a little bit, and we're going to tab back into object mode. We're going to right click and convert this back to a curve, and then we're going to go over here into these curve options, and we're going to go into geometry, and we're going to give it a depth of 0.01, and that'll give us a material, a mesh to work with. Alright, and so now we're ready to do the shading magic. So I'm going to go to shading, I'm going to hit 1 on the number pad and period, zoom in on that guy. I'm going to go up here into my overlays, and I'm going to turn off outline selected so we can see what the shader is doing. We're going to create a new shader. I do not need the principled, so I'm going to delete this. Well, I'm going to delete the, well, didn't mean to delete it all. I'm going to delete the principled shader, and then we are going to use an emission shader. Search emission, and I want to shift D this guy because I want to have 2 colors in mind. For mine, I'm going to use a green and a yellow, and I'm going to need a mix shader to put these guys together. So shift S, shift S. I'm doing shift S, sorry. Shift A, search mix shader, and shader to surface. The green is going to go in shader 1, the orange is going to go in shader 2, and right now you can see it's kind of mixing them for a yellowish green color. Now then, I'm going to flip to the other side of this node tree, and I'm going to build what's going to control the way these waves go, these waves of light. So Shift A, and we need a texture coordinate, and we're going to use the UV, and we're going to use the X from the UV. So Shift A, and we're going to need a separate XYZ. So we'll put that UV into vector, and we're going to use the X here. And we need to do a math node, and the math node is going to be the controller for us. Well, added the wrong thing. Shift A, search, math, and we'll put it here. I'm going to hit N for properties, and just so that we'll be reminded this is what we want to animate, I'm going to label this guy the controller, and we're going to throw the X into the value here. Alright, now then, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need a wave texture to give us those pulses of light. So Shift A, search, wave texture. I'm going to put that guy right there, and the value is going to go into the vector. In a minute, we're going to look at these different waves. There's sine, saw, and triangle. They'll each do different things. In my example, I use saw, but I can show you what, once we get this set up, I can show you what sine and triangle will do as well. Let's see, and then we need 2 more math nodes. Shift A, math. Put this guy here. Put that guy over there. Shift D. Alright, so this math node is going to be a power. This math node is going to be a multiply. The power, we're going to go from the wave texture into the power node. We're going to go from the power node into the factor here. As you can see, it's already starting to work a little bit of magic there. It's, instead of being smeared together, we can see that wave is starting to take effect. What we want to do is we also want to take the value of power down here to value for our multiply. Well, okay, third time's a charm, guys. Maybe not. There we go. And then I just want to take this value into strength here, and also into strength here. Alright, so we're starting to see some of the magic. What I want us to do is up the strength that's going to the mission shader, and 15 is what worked for me on the one I created earlier, and I'm going to look at maybe a 10 here. And then I forgot to tell you, my default render setups is Eevee and having ambient occlusion turned on. So if you're not using ambient occlusion, go ahead and check that. The default settings should be fine. And then under material, we want to check alpha blend. Alright, so there. And then so as you can see, we've got these pulses here, and this controller value is what we're going to animate. So you see as it moves, the pulse moves. So I can do a 0 here. Let's go ahead and add a timeline. There we go. And I'm going to go to 0, and I'm going to set that value at 0 here for the controller by hitting I. Put a keyframe in there. I'm going to go to 120, and I'm just going to select 1, and I'm going to hit I to keyframe that guy. I'm going to set my duration to 120, and as you can see, that's moving pretty fast. And where I was telling you these waves make a difference. So in saw, you can see it's yellow and green. If I change it to sine, all of a sudden green is on both sides, the yellow is in the middle. And then triangle seems to be a similar effect, but a little more squared off. But for me, I like the saw. And then let's change the scale to -2, and let's hit play. Oh yeah, so see, that's a little more smooth, but you can see it kind of jumps here at the 120. So what we kind of need to do is go back here to 0 and kind of notice that's about where we're at, and I want to go to 120, and I'm going to just move this guy. I'm gonna hold down shift so that I can do it slowly, and I'm just gonna start scrolling left until I get it about where I want it. Let's see how that's. Let's go back over here. So it was right there at the bottom. So let me take this back just a little bit again on the scale. And let's see if that's a little bit better. Okay, I'm still got a little bit, it's kind of jumping back just a smidge. So let's go to 120 here and shift and take it back just a little bit. And let's see how that works. I still got a little bit of jump. I got to play with that scale to get it just right. The other thing I want you to notice, some changes we can do, is notice how there's the small beams here in the middle, but there's this one long beam up here at the top. If we go into object mode and say edit mode, and I select these two guys, and I right click and subdivide, and I'm gonna right click and subdivide again, and I'm gonna tab out. Now notice at the bottom it has that one big pulse, but at the top it's got the short pulses. So the number of vertices that are in each segment is what's going to control the way that line works. So where there's lots of segments, you get these short bursts. Where there's just one segment, you see it stretch and go. And so this, if we add a camera, Shift A, add the camera, and then we'll do Control Alt 0, and I render image. We see this is what I'm gonna get. This is kind of the light version. If you want to do a more cartoony version like I did, if you go to the render engine settings and just click on Freestyle, and again we'll render this image, and it'll throw in these lines and make it look more cartoony. And so you can play with this. Like I said, I'll have to play with this a little more on the scale to get that 0 and 120 keyframes exactly in place. This controller value for this math add is how we animate it, and then this scale is what we play with. Again, holding shift as we move it, it helps us just a little bit to move that slowly. But this is how you make laser light lines on a object. Oh, I want to show you one other thing. If I take the scale down a whole lot, let's just say I go 0.2, you can see how that scale adjusts the lines even more. So you can have a lot of fun with what you want to do based on how you're adjusting the scale on that wave texture. I hope this was helpful to you, and I would appreciate if you would subscribe so that you can catch out on these tutorials as I learn to do things. I kind of learned this as I was trying to work on a logo for my YouTube channel, which is here. And like I said, you can apply that to the letters individually, or you can make a common object. But anyway, I appreciate your time and hope to see you next time.